Hey guys, Young Drummer here. Wanted to show you my 1963, 1964-ish ROGERS holiday drum set in gray steel ripple. Let's have a listen, I'll be right back. Let's see, I am falling in love with this. With every day I'm falling in love with this drum kit more. I have a 1963/1964, I'll talk about that in a second, ROGERS Holiday in 13, 16, 22 with a matching 5-inch snare. I got the set off eBay, bought it off some great folks, got it at an auction. It did need to be restored, it was missing some parts. The people were great, they shipped it like they were shipping an atom bomb. It was just, took me an hour to unpack the thing. And let's get right into it. So why this kit, as I was researching to do this video, I really lucked out with buying this kit and this snare drum. The snare drum I bought about 3 or 4 months later. I've had these shells for about a year now. And why I'm lucky is these are the 3-ply that Rogers didn't do for very long in between their 1950s era and then the 5-ply holiday that most Rogers holidays from the 60s up until 1970 something, 1972, are 5-ply. And the coveted ones are the 3-ply, and that's what I have. And then this wasn't planned at all. When I bought the snare drum a little bit later, it also is 3-ply, so I really lucked out in that way. And why the 3-ply is significant is it wasn't around for very long, as I understand it. I'm new to Rogers history. There's a Rogers book out there that's fantastic, and you can find a lot of great stuff online, and a lot of heated debate online too about what the 3-ply shells are. So let's see, in the 1950s, they were Rogers was, I think they were doing 6-ply Jasper shells with a rounded over bearing edge. That changed, I think, in the late 50s, very early 60s. They started introducing Swivomatic hardware, I think, in the late 50s, and that ran up until 1976, until Rogers did the big R series memory lock stuff. And what else? So these 3-plies, the debate that I found online is that a lot of people say that they're Keller shells. So people know that they're Keller shells. Keller was a drum shell company that Rogers hired, and I think that they might have been their first big contract. The shells are, some people say they're 3-plies of Jasper. A lot of people say that they're maple, poplar maple. When they went to the 5-plies in 1964, that was, I believe, it was a combination of maple, poplar, maple, sandwich in between like that. Really no sonic difference between the 5-plies and the 3-plies, although a lot of people do report that the 3-plies just have a much more warmer, tubbier sound, tubbier semantics, if that makes kind of sense. And I would agree with, when I first tuned this kit up, instantly fell in love with it and felt that it was pretty special. So where was I? I want to talk a little bit about Rogers bearing edges. In the 50s, a lot of the drum shells in the 30s, 40s, 50s were this rounded over thing. I once had a WFL kit that the bearing edges were even, there was sort of an afterthought. They were just big chunk, like a shelf and then a drop. I had to have that recut. And when they started doing a sharp 45-degree bearing edge, that's when that really kind of changed things in terms of volume. What I love about Rogers, and I've owned about 4 kits, I've flipped about 3 of them, and this one I just really fell in love with the wrap. I felt like the wrap was rare, so I said why not, and pulled the trigger on it. But what I really love about Rogers, this is true for all the kits that I've had, is they tune up incredibly easy. I've never had a hard time with the Rogers. I've had a hard time with Slingerland, less of a hard time with Ludwig from the 60s. And I've even had the bearing edges recut on our Slingerland kit, just because I find that a lot of, when those shells left the factory, Ludwig, Slingerland, I'm not really a Gretsch guy. I haven't really owned many Gretsch kits. But those bearing edges can leave the factory pretty sloppy, which I was kind of surprised about. When you get into this, you think that these things were amazing. You know, they are amazing, don't get me wrong. I'm really a Ludwig guy at heart. I feel like I'm cheating on Ludwig by the Rogers kind of stuff. But I was really surprised when you kind of get into this stuff and you learn about bearing edges that a lot of those drums left the factory kind of sloppy. I can show you some of my Ludwig stuff that still tunes up great, but when you really take a look at the bearing edge, it's kind of messed up. But not so with Rogers. These things tune up very easily. They have a great range, and you can find an easy tone of what you want at each range. So I love that. And when I bought this off eBay, it came with a where is it? It came with a Powertone, which it's a date and tag Powertone. Powertone is like a Dynasonic, except it's not. The thing that it is a brass shell, and a Dynasonic is different because it has lines on the inside. It has the frame underneath. A Dynasonic is a 10-lug snare drum. This is an 8-lug, and I would take this over a Supra any day. Superphonic. Still love those, but aluminum versus brass is, it's night and day. But these, I find these to be more affordable. Like if you're going to get sort of a 10 lug Ludwig Superphonic, and if you want that in brass, it's probably going to run you about $500. But you could pick one of these up for $250, and they're just incredible. They have this great throw, the clock-based throw. This is the later version of it. So from Dayton, Ohio, and does this have any serial numbers on there? Dayton, Ohio, when this the serial number is 24550. I wonder if anyway, because these serial numbers are different than that. I wonder if the serial numbers reset themselves, because I just realized that now. So there's that. Okay, let me get this camera on because I want to show you guys the snare drum that I got with this. Okay, so that's on there. All right. So I want to cover why this kit, the 3-ply, love it, and the 3-ply with the snare, but there's an interesting thing going on. Wasn't planned, but when I got this snare drum, I bought this snare drum from a guy up in upstate New York. He runs a little vintage drum shop called Jollity Drum Farm. I'll put his website up because it's just fantastic stuff. He was great to work with. I was just basically in the midst of a fiending drug addiction, drum addiction, and wanting to find a matching wrap to match these beautiful guys that are here. But he didn't have anything in beaver tail. That's probably the other thing. The interesting other thing about this kit is this kit dates to 1963, as does this drum from the serial numbers. But what's going on is a changing of the lugs, and I think it's probably one of those scenarios where they had a surplus of stuff and they decided to change the hardware, and they just started throwing stuff on there to get it out the door and use up what they had. So maybe this is one of the last sort of 3-ply and the last of the bread and butter lugs. Bread and butter lugs are the ROGERS older version of a lug. These are brass folded jobs that tend to crack under stress. I don't have many stress cracks on this one. They're still amazing drums, but probably the stuff with the bread and butter, I may be wrong on this, is less expensive due to the fact that you are going to have to deal with replacing lugs here and there. A lot of people have talked about that online. The tricky thing about this too, if you wanted to change, these are beaver tail. I can get a close-up of that in a few minutes. These are bread and butter. You can't, they're not interchangeable because the hole spacing doesn't match up. If you want to put stronger lugs of the ROGERS beaver tail lugs on there, you're going to have to drill, which is always a pain in the ass. And it's it decreases the value of the drum, but I think at that point you got a player's drum anyway. This is a player's kit for me. It's not in mint shape. The hardware is scratched. There's some goofy things going on with the tom holder. So there's that. Okay, so let me get a close-up over here in this camera. Early clock face with it's got this kind of black thing going on there. Great strainer, built like a tank. This is a close-up. These are later version bread and butter lugs. They have these 2 dimples on the sides. Gentleman who I bought it for gave me a deal on it. He was fantastic. This was it was priced high because it was in amazing shape. And so it wasn't just a beater that he was getting rid of. These haven't really cracked yet. Flat gray interior, as the rest of these drums have, and a serial number of 28975. These 3 are around the 31477. I can show you some pics of those. So they all kind of hang out in 1963. So there's that. Let's move on to the hardware, which ROGERS hardware, the Swivomatic stuff that I think that started in the late 50s, engineered by a guy named Joe Thompson. Joe Thompson, yeah. It's just incredible stuff. So incredible that Ludwig guys, the British rockers, this is, I'm sure you guys know this, is Ringo, Mitch Mitchell, Ginger Baker, they would throw these, they would have these Swivomatic tom holders, ball and socket, very, very durable stuff with hex posts so it wouldn't slip or anything like that. They had them installed on their Ludwig kits. It just became a thing. In fact, I think that someone found recently in the past 10 years in Ringo's old bass drum, they found a card of maybe the gentleman who installed his ROGERS Swivomatic tom holder on there. But the other thing I want to show you guys is what I also added to the kit a couple months later is the ROGERS Swivomatic bass drum pedal. This thing really needs to be talked about. What I find, this is the best bass drum pedal that I've ever played with, the most dynamic, the most difficult to get dialed in. What I'm going to show you now is it comes with this cradle thing, and your bass it slips into the bass drum hoop, and these two tension rods tighten this cradle to the hoop, and has these two posts on the bottom, right here and here. And what that does is that rests in this cast piece right here. And when everything's tight, the bass drum pedal is not going anywhere. But what I really love about it is your bass drum isn't going anywhere. So what this guy over here does, you'll see it kind of brush up against the cradle, and that locks the pedal to the cradle, and the cradle is locked into the hoop. It's amazing. They also have these two almost like old school box cutter shaped razor things, chunks of metal that anchor the bass drum for to prevent even further slippage. So built like a tank, built like an absolute tank. And there's a lot going on with this pedal. A couple things. You can get reproduction leather straps for these things on eBay. I play with a wooden beater because I like the additional weight of it. I also like the sound. And the flexibility of this thing is just incredible. You got a drum key on the bass plate. There's a tension rod hiding out in there. When you loosen that, this floorboard or footboard can go up or down depending on where you want it, depending on where the ball of your foot or whatever kind of hangs out. There's also an additional, let me get rid of that. You unscrew this tension rod here, and this piece kind of goes along with that, and you can shorten it or lengthen it to where you want it. What I really love about the pedal is inside here, this guy. This is a pivoting bass drum pedal. So I want to get a good shot of this to make sure that this point comes through, because this is what I love most about it is my foot is always askew on the pedal like this, depending on where the bass drum is. Sometimes it's sort of, when we think about a bass drum going out, just sort of, if you have OCD or a little bit OCD like me, mild OCD, you want the bass drum to be flush with the audience. And what that does is it kind of, the pedal kind of dictates where you need to be sitting and that kind of a thing. So what I found is my foot naturally hangs out on a bass drum pedal kind of like this or whatever. It's not where you want it. But this pedal's designed, the Swiv stuff is you can get it wherever you want it. So therefore I find that my foot lies flush with it, but basically the pedal is therefore askew from the beater, and it still works just amazing. Can't say how much I love that feature. That's what makes it very, very comfortable for me. The other piece about it is this pedal, if you get it dialed in right, it's incredibly sensitive and incredibly fast. I find it to be even more efficient kinetically than a Speed King, and I love Speed Kings. I put those together and re-lubricate them and do all kinds of things with Speed Kings, and I find that this thing is just amazing. It took a while to get used to for this post to be up like that. It's a little bit wonky. And lastly, a couple more things is, well, this guy's loose. All right, so there's also a height option. So you can have it incredibly low. This post comes up and down, comes out, and you can really kind of, to get a feel for where you want the angle to happen, is just fantastic. In addition to that, this also pivots for more flexibility, for wherever you want it. The spring that came with mine was still pretty good, so it's still got some good kind of stuff going on there. One thing that was difficult for me to dial in was so getting the post of your beater and this thing to line up, that's where things get wonky with dialing in one of these things. In fact, I don't want to mess with it too much. Alright, so there you have it, Swivomatic bass drum pedal. I think that this is a first generation or second generation. Buddy Rich's favorite bass drum pedal. Blah, 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 blah. There you have it. Alright. The next thing I wanted to kind of feature is, when I got this kit, the kit came with a not a Swivomatic, but the bass drum pedal was something, I think it was called a Rocket, and it has some pieces missing, so it wasn't really something that I could use. But let me see if I can get this guy off there, because the kit did come with this cymbal arm. And I've never played with a cymbal arm, and I don't know if I'll ever play with one without one again. This guy is highly sought after online if you're a Rogers fan. What I love about it is I have flexibility with going in and out on the post. The post is nice and long. This is telescopic, comes in and out to the height that you want it. And the real great piece about it is this ball socket thing that's featured on all the Swiv stuff. It's just amazing. So, can't get enough of this kit. Alright, put that back. The brackets for the cymbal arms and the floor tom brackets are they're called knobby brackets, I believe. And let me feature this guy right here. There they are, right there. And they're incredible in the way that you usually have two short tension rods that lock everything into place. And on the floor toms, the Swivomatic stuff, the post, bass drum spurs, floor tom legs. Let me get a better shot of that. Take you guys over here. They're hex posts, and really prevents any slippage. I don't know if you can kind of see that it's a hex from there, but you can definitely do it down here, that it's sharp, not rounded over. Two tension rods, not going anywhere. There is a problem. A friend of mine had a floor tom that he asked me about, and I didn't really know much about Rogers at the time, but what he was saying is, and I'm having this problem, I'll show you in a minute on my small tom, is the things that protrude out of these brackets, this plate, there's welding underneath that welds that post in there behind the bracket, and the bracket attaches to the shelf. Sometimes this stuff can lose their welding, so what he was saying is this part was holding the leg fine, but it was wobbling because of the welding that had come loose. So that can be a potential issue, which I have over here. I'll show you in a second. Let me move over here, move the stuff in the way. Okay, so here we have the veined tom holder. There are two collettes, two brackets, and what I have going on in here, as I mentioned, is the welding has come loose from this threaded thing, which I'll show you. Yeah. Alright, it's coming loose. Here we go. Show these. Okay. So there's the threaded bit, the male to the female collet. And what's going on there is you can see the hex doesn't move. That hex post isn't going anywhere. And this male piece conforms to the hex. So what I have here is it's lost its welding, and it's just kind of spinning around that bracket. I'm going to have that welded or take it to a mechanic or something like that. So that's that. Still love the tom holder. I have great flexibility. I have another goofy thing going on here. Is, I don't know if you guys can see that, but I think I have the wrong bracket going on there, because that could potentially be a bass drum spur bracket, because it's angled at a funky angle. Notice how it's different than this guy. This guy's coming right out. This guy's coming off, sort of heading northwest. And that's the way it came. And it's not like I was missing stuff. I took all the parts off, and I don't know what happened there. So I might replace that down the road. The hex stuff on this particular one, you can see it's doing this weird Dr. Seuss bend thing. I actually had to take this to a jeweler because I couldn't get this to come down into the base. In fact, I still have a hard time with it. But I needed to get so one snag in the road is if you have to abuse these things to really make it happen. But when I got my tom holder, you can see a lot of wear and tear on this guy. When I got my tom holder, this post was pretty warped and sticking out of the bass drum. So there's that. I have a cool, very
I got a cool original Rogers bass drum head with the logo there. I think that's from a Fullerton, a later era. I took that off a Fullerton kit, wanted to keep that for myself to put on this guy. The bass drum spurs, let me take you for a trip down here, I'm missing a knob. Oh, incidentally, these knobs unscrew on the earlier ones. Show you that. So if you are recording and you have some funky rattle, that can be a potential bump in the road. And then these are again, these great hex things. These have these protruding T things that prevent the spur from going into the bass drum and rattling around in there. These came with bow tie tension rods. On the later stuff after Fullerton, you have these, reminds me of the band, the Eagles, because these wings on them, they look like wings to me. I had to get a new set, and I also had to redo the hoops on these guys. I had to repaint them, and I got some silver sparkle inlay because there's no way in hell that I was going to find the gray steel ripple. The gray steel ripple wrap came in pretty dusty, but polished it up with Novus, which is it's a wrap polishing stuff that you can get on Amazon. I think it's like 25 bucks. Some guys buy it in bulk. They love it so much, and I would agree that it's pretty great. And what it does is it really polishes things up. You can see some scratches and stuff, but not that big of a deal. So I soak all my stuff. So when I get a drum set, I'm going to keep it for myself or flip it, is I take all the hardware off, replace any parts as best as I can, and I soak my parts in something called grease lightning. I soak it overnight, and then after that one day soak, the grime and slime just kind of like comes right off, and it's a quick polish, and you can kind of do a lot with it. And it, you don't have to, I find that I don't have to work as hard. Isn't that beautiful? Just love the kit. All right, guys. I think I've covered about everything. So
around here. All right. Yeah. So there you have it. 1963, 64-ish. After 64, they went to 5-ply. So I've been blessed. I got this 3-ply thing. The drum god smiled upon me. Wasn't planned to get the snare drum in 3-ply. Was just sort of like a very happy mistake. A good Bob Ross. So please subscribe. Leave some comments. Debate about the plies. Were they maple, poplar, maple? Were they jasper? Were they some other things? Even someone was ranting about it being birch. They don't really feel like birch to me. And I'll throw some pics up of the plies that I have on the small tom, the snare, and the floor tom to see what I mean and see what you guys think. Have a good one. Leave a comment. Subscribe. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.